Inside the royal court of ancient Pataliputra, fear often wore the mask of respect. The atmosphere was defined by golden ornaments and silken robes, but underneath the wealth was a rigid system of sycophancy. Chanakya watched this display from the shadows. He recognized a king who wasn't just lacking in education, but one who was actively hostile toward any truth that challenged his authority. This highlights a persistent social paradox: the tendency to equate high birth, physical beauty, or academic titles with genuine wisdom. When a leader is insulated by this illusion, his ego creates a psychological echo chamber. In this environment, contrary information is never permitted to enter. Kautilya argued that when a society's leaders begin mistaking their own status for actual intellect, they have already invited the first stage of collapse. He captured this dynamic in a specific Sanskrit aphorism, describing those who possess beauty and high birth but are entirely empty of knowledge. Chanakya used the kinshuk flower, seen here, as the perfect metaphor. Its orange petals are vibrant and striking to the eye, yet the flower is completely scentless and lacks any internal substance. This metaphor helps define the boundary between simple ignorance and true foolishness. Ignorance is a curable lack of information. Foolishness is an active psychological fortress built to keep that information out. This condition renders external beauty and high status useless, as the ego acts as a permanent barrier to the outside world. For Chanakya, a fool is defined by specific behaviors: uncontrolled speech, overconfidence, and a deep-seated arrogance that prevents self-correction. This arrogance creates a tragic irony. A person can physically surround themselves with information, like the etched text on this ancient palm leaf manuscript, but they will lack the humility required to actually absorb it. He compared this state of mind to this wooden ladle. The tool is constantly immersed in a pot of soup, yet it remains completely unable to taste the broth it stirs. A humble student, by contrast, absorbs knowledge the way dry soil drinks in water. They recognize their own lack of data and seek to fill it. Without that humility, mere exposure to facts is meaningless. The ego creates an impenetrable shield, ensuring that no amount of data can ever lead to understanding. In public life, this internal pathology translates into chaos. The fool engages in pointless arguments, follows base impulses, and reacts to any form of criticism with blind rage. This diagram illustrates the fool's mind as a closed loop of confirmation bias. Kautilya described these individuals as animals in human form, people who occupy space and consume resources without ever utilizing higher intellect. This total lack of judgment is dangerous. It actively dismantles the careful, meticulous work that wiser members of a state have spent years building. An unteachable mind is an active, chaotic force. Once it reaches a position of power, it begins to tear down the very structures that sustain a healthy state. We can see the historical proof of this in the story of King Dhananda. He sat at the head of the Nanda Empire, then the most powerful geopolitical force in India. As this text notes, Dhananda possessed an overwhelming military machine. He had tens of thousands of cavalry and hundreds of thousands of infantry. Yet a political vacuum was growing in the northwest. Alexander the Great was marching toward the border with an alien culture and a seasoned army. Chanakya traveled to the court specifically to warn Dhananda of this incoming invasion. Blinded by his own perceived invincibility, Dhananda dismissed the warning and humiliated the scholar. He believed his numbers made him untouchable. The Nanda Empire possessed every physical resource required for victory, but it was dismantled by a ruler whose psychological pathology prevented him from hearing a necessary truth. Chanakya's advice for dealing with such individuals was strict: never debate them. Instead, preserve your energy and control them through their ego, rather than attempting to argue from the facts. When arrogance is left unchecked at the highest levels, the end result is always a total collapse, leaving behind only silence and abandoned power. True knowledge only begins where pride ends. When we see how an unteachable mind can bring a massive empire to its knees, we have to realize that this kind of internal blindness is among the most destructive forces in human history.